I know they play every single game for a reason, so I don't want to ruin the suspense, but after the Cardinals win on Sunday, then we're going to reconvene next week. I don't want to, preempt the athletic process or anything, but there's one primary reason why the Cardinals are going to beat the 49ers in Week 18. Not sure if you guys are able to hit rewind all the way to the beginning of the season. One of the big factors, the Honolulu blueprint, where if you play the Lions, what happens to you the very next week?
Have you been keeping up with that, Paul? Do you know what's happened over the last 6 weeks?
I bailed a little bit early. Actually, went to 5-0, and then somebody broke the chain. It became 5-1, and then I lost interest. ADD around here.
You lost interest, and then you brought it back now?
Sure.
Why are you being a hater? I'd like to hear the rest of Paul's theory.
Oh, but he doesn't have. That's the problem. Is he has a theory, but he didn't do the research.
Where's Grialou? Come on, Grialou, put in a full week around here. That's where Craig Grialou comes in for that sort of stuff. #no math. You guys thought I was going to say maybe because Brock Purdy isn't expected to play, or maybe because the 49ers are on a short week, or maybe the Cardinals know Josh Dobbs. More on the Pasternaut a little bit later. But don't forget about the physicality factor. The Niners going – and how about the 49ers with, was it 2 former Cardinals on their offensive line in that game?
Yeah, they were rotating at left tackle, Charlie Heck and Austin Pleasance, who both were on the practice squad this year.
Yeah, so there you go. I take that as a good sign, actually. Whenever former Cardinals are in the lineup elsewhere, I actually take that as a positive. I actually nodded at the screen and said, okay, that's good. Because when you have enough talent, right, that hits the street and makes other teams, that usually is a sign that you're at least going in the right direction in terms of personnel.
Well, with Charlie Heck, he didn't even hit the streets. He was on the practice squad, and the 49ers swooped in and took him away.
All right. So, and then the Cardinals had a cornerback who was recently claimed by someone, and his name eludes me. And of course, you'll remember it, Darren, because you're winning. Wise guy.
That's your guy,
Devon Wilson.
Yeah.
There you go, Devon Wilson.
I don't know if we're talking about
yes.
Marco Wilson.
No, we're not talking about Marco Wilson. This is a no Marco Wilson zone.
That's right. No math and no Marco.
Come on.
And that'll be our intro to Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office.
Jeez Louise, you two.
Automation, Paul Calvisi, Dani Sureck, Darren Urban. Darren seems a little overdressed for this New Year's Eve edition. Is there something?
New Year's Eve.
Was there
let's look a little.
Oh, you're going right to a party from this?
No,
Is that what
I'm
you're
just saying.
Okay.
Sometimes
another
you need
party
to
I
dress
wasn't
up.
invited to.
There's a dress code here, Paul. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I see. Okay.
Actually, I'm going to be dead honest about this.
Oh no.
Paul is the last person I would ever get on for the dress code.
That's right.
Everybody else in our department, I might, but Paul, I would never.
Paul is the only person who does not partake in wearing jeans on Friday.
That's true.
I said I was being honest.
You know why? Because I never remember. And that should be no surprise to anyone who's followed Wise Guy Trivia all year long. I can't even
You don't remember to dress casually on
I can't
Friday?
even remember it's casual dress Friday, much less who played defensive end in a game against the Rams in 1994. Okay?
Don't even sneak peek?
Don't even answer that. Don't even answer that. All right. How was the LA experience?
Fred Dean? What?
No, see, that's what I don't need
right now.
right
The LA experience. I had a great weekend in LA. We celebrated Kevin's birthday in our department, one of our videographers who was on the road. And it was a perfect, if you know Kevin, which nobody listening does. The best way to celebrate Kevin's birthday is exactly what we did. We went to a Korean barbecue restaurant that was also a karaoke restaurant. So you went and it was a private room and there was a whole group of us singing karaoke for 2.5 hours. It was a great time.
I could definitely see Paul singing karaoke.
No, the key there would be dinner before the karaoke. Otherwise, you lose your appetite by listening to the karaoke. So I trust
the key would be the drinks before the karaoke.
That's right. Well, I've seen both of you at work at karaoke in Nashville. We won't talk about that. So let's get back to the game. And where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the beginning, or should we just advance to the very end? And let's just go right to the Trey McBride, because it seems like everyone is still talking about the fateful play at the goal line. Around the horn we go. Thoughts, assessments. Does that leave some sort of indelible mark that goes into the off season? Seems like you can almost escape or evade anything on a week-to-week basis, but that play at that moment, in that manner, it seems to leave a permanent mark.
See, I'm going to disagree just because of where they were. Now, I will say this. In the seconds after it happened, my oldest son in our family group chat, which is my two sons, my two adult sons, and my wife and myself, he put in there, he goes, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm glad we didn't win in Carolina, because if that was how we were going to be eliminated from the playoffs, I wouldn't be able to handle it. But they had been eliminated from the playoffs, so...
Yeah.
When you look at that play, the thing that stands out the most is just being unlucky. The Cardinals were right there on the 5-yard line. I like the play call, finding McBride. His defender was behind him. He was past the goal line. The ball came out fast. It was a good play. And quarterback Kyler Murray was right when he said post-game, 99% of the time they make that play. It was a combination of communication and timing and footwork where McBride turned around right as Murray zipped that ball, because that ball came out fast, and it ricocheted off his helmet. And then, unlucky enough, the defender who was behind McBride, guarding wide receiver Zay Jones, made a leaping catch for it and intercepted the ball in the end zone. So I like the play call. I like trying to find McBride. He wasn't able to get his hands up quick enough. Both he and Murray took responsibility for that postgame. I think it was just something more of being unlucky in that situation, and that's how you lose the game.
How I would chime in is I've had people talk to me about why the Cardinals weren't running the ball. I don't have a problem with the play call. I really don't. And if you hear Trey McBride talking about it, and he's like, they gave us the exact look we wanted for that play. It should have worked if we would have executed it.
They got 0. So they brought 7. That was the perfect play.
I don't want to hear about they should have run. That's Monday morning quarterbacking, which is what we're doing anyways. But
it's Tuesday.
The other thing is it's not just like, I know people want to get mad. Did Kyler throw it too hard? Blah, 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 blah. Like the luck that was involved, that it stayed in the air long enough that dude could come off of Zay Jones and dive for the ball and still almost let it touch the ground. I mean, that will never be replicated ever. Yeah. And so I'm agreeing with Dani. I do think it's bad luck. Obviously, not everybody wants to hear that. Obviously, you can't mess up a chance like this, but no offense, Kurt Warner, but that's not like the Super Bowl interception where you throw it right to him.
Okay, so let's start with the guy who intercepted it. Ahkello Witherspoon just happens to be a 6'2" corner with like 33-inch arms. I know that because on NFL Network they actually gave the measurables, right, and tried to
Paul's jealous.
Illustrate the point that you had a taller corner who was at the right place at the right time to make an unbelievable catch. But from a Cardinals perspective, what was vexing was the fact that number 4 was getting torched all game long. He was not having a good game. Different Cardinals receivers at different times were taking their turns beating the doors off of Ahkello Witherspoon, and then he's the guy to make the game-saving interception. So that was number 1. Number 2, someone who has played and coached for a long time in the NFL said the problem with the throw wasn't necessarily that it had too much velo on it, as they say in baseball. As Steve Smith Sr. said after the game on NFL Network, he had a problem with how hot. He said too much hot sauce on that throw. I was told by someone who should know that the problem with the throw was it wasn't down and away.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So if it's incomplete, it's not an interception for the exact reason for what happened is there's no deflection of any sort because it's away from the defender and it's away from the body of the intended target, so it doesn't deflect up in the air.
That's the unfortunate luck, is that was a first down for the Cardinals. And the way the offense had been playing really in the second half, I have a good feeling that they would have found a way to find the end zone in one of those other
would have been 3 more plays.
Yeah.
Because you had to have a touchdown. I look.
And by the way, the Cardinals have been practicing that for at least 2 months, that play, and they were really confident in that play.
I mean, again, I'm not dismissing the idea that the ball placement should have been better. And I think once Kyler looked at the video, which we haven't talked to him since he looked at the video, I'm sure he's going to say the same thing. He'd be dumb not to. But again, I'm not, in the context of what we're talking about and why I agree with Dani of being unlucky is the actual interception is unlucky. I'm not saying it was unlucky that they should have had a completion because the throw was off a little bit and because the timing was off a little bit. I get that. The interception was the unlucky part to me because I mean, I was just watching right before we started recording. It was the Alabama-Michigan bowl game. Oh, tough break for Alabama. Let me just play the world's smallest violin here. Anyways, there was a ball that was, it wasn't the same play, but it was a similar play over the middle. There was a thing, it popped up in the air. There was about 3 guys from Michigan that could have had it. It didn't get intercepted. Like, that's what happens to most of those plays.
The luck goes beyond the ricochet, though, because the ball hit the ground. The reason, though, the call stood was because the ball didn't move while it was on the ground. So there were a lot of factors where you're talking about the interception specifically, that part of the play where it was just, it was luck.
And just to clarify, that's because he had control of it before it hit the ground. You're right, it hit the ground. But as long as it can touch the ground, if you've already got control before it, which he did. Yeah. It's a good call.
All right, so by the way, editor's note, Darren is a Michigan native. See, when it comes down to a final play of any game, just
Go Blue.
A single play, I tend to think, and I mentioned this, I was trying to coach up Kyle Vandenbosch on Red Sea Report just moments ago. I said, I tend to think of other plays in the game. When it comes down to a single play, I think of the block PAT. I think of 2 interceptions that could have been. Buda Baker, most definitely. Garrett Williams, arguably. We got 2 hands on the ball. And then you think about James Conner stuffed on 4th and 1. You think about any number of penalties that were very costly. So, yes, it's very easy when there's a fateful play that decides a game with less than a minute to go. But there's so many other singular plays. If the game's that tightly contested, I tend to think of a lot of other plays as well.
Of course. Bottom line is they scored 1 touchdown, and they had almost 400 yards of offense. Take away that last drive. You should have been in the end zone at least 2 more times, probably.
1 for 4 in the red zone.
Can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah. So there you go. And when I say lasting mark, I just wonder, Trey McBride, as bummed out as he looked after the game, and you guys were in the locker room, you tell me, but here's a guy who had a historic game. He's had a historic season.
It didn't even play every game.
So his 100 receptions this year, he's the 5th Cardinals player ever in that category, with the likes of Larry Fitzgerald and Larry Centers and Anquan Bolden, D-Hop. Is he the 4th one, I believe? He's the 10th tight end in NFL history to have 100 catches in a season. Think about that. He's the first tight end in team history with 100 catches. It should have been such a joyous moment to celebrate, and nobody's dauber was more down than Trey McBride.
Isn't it also the milestone, 2nd tight end in franchise history, joining Hall of Famer Jackie Smith to have 1,000 receiving yards?
Yes. There's another ding. So it's a triple ding game.
Thankfully, he got his first receiving touchdown on his 98th reception of the year. Right. If you're looking for a positive.
Right. Remember the old Steve Young when he won the Super Bowl and he took the monkey off his back, right? The whole Joe Montana shadow that he took off, and that was Trey McBride.
There's not going to be a lasting impression negatively. There's not going to be any cloud hanging over McBride for that. That's these players week to week when they talk about fleshing it includes plays like that. Is that something this offseason that might be on McBride's mind? And when you're talking about chemistry and connection and all those small details, yes, that is going to come up. It's not going to cloud anything getting ready for the season finale against the 49ers. And McBride has had such a great season. It's been so impressive. When you look at those stats, when you look beyond the stats and just use the eye test, the catches he makes, how physical he is. It's just been, and in the blocking game as well, not even just as a receiver, it's been a really great year of growth for McBride to see that.
I'm going to say that, and I want to get back to McBride's unbelievable season, but I do want to quickly say that it's funny, but in a lot of ways, his 1 touchdown on 108 catches or whatever he's got now
104
is a microcosm of this offense. Like, you've moved the ball, you don't score enough touchdowns. But I think Trey has had a unreal season. I think he's been everything that not only the Cardinals needed him to be, but I remember talking to him right before the season. I did a story on him and his brother and how close they were and being together in college, playing together in college.
Do they still make recipes off Pinterest? That was I remember that from your story.
They don't live together anymore.
Oh, they don't? Okay.
So,
right.
yeah,
Gotcha.
the older brother,
okay.
he went back to Colorado. It was time for Trey to
Gotcha.
spread his wings on his own.
Gotcha.
But I think that before the season, Trey's not a guy who's going to go pontificate of what he wants to do.
Not going to what?
Yeah, jeez. Remind me, Oma, we need to make that like Darren's word of the day for next week's.
Get me a calendar for the new year. Make your own customized calendar where every day is a different word of the day.
And I'm a wordsmith, Dani. I'm a wordsmith.
Express one's opinions in a way considered annoyingly pompous.
Yes. He's not going to pontificate about what stats he might want, but he clearly had some goals in mind. I'm sure the TDs aren't there, but I would be surprised if 100 catches and 1,000 yards weren't there. And for him to get that, and by the way, he's going to play a quote unquote normal regular season because he did miss that one game. So he's going to do it all in a 16-game season, whatever he finishes with.
And oh, by the way, he has a chance at tying the all-time record for catches in a season by a tight end, which happens to be 116 by Zach Ertz in 2018 with Philly. And you're thinking, he's 12 catches away. Come on. Hello, he's had 3 dozen-catch games this year. That was his third 12-catch game of the year. 12 more catches, he owns a piece of the all-time record.
We talk about James Conner as a running back. He gets better the more he gets hit. As he gets warm and he really starts going down. McBride is the same way. You start to get McBride a couple touches on the ball, and he becomes unstoppable the more he gets it.
All right, so Dani, you're down on the sideline, right, for that game. Do you agree with my take? And I know Darren's going to disagree. And he wants to disagree with what I'm about to say.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Not only is Darren going to be a contrarian, but he wants to disagree. When I make the comparison that Trey McBride is that catalyst, that spark, when he makes a play, makes a catch, that he fires up the Cardinals sideline, not totally unlike what Larry Fitzgerald used to do towards the end of his career. The stadium would come alive, but also the sideline would come alive. Did you notice that on the Cardinals sideline?
Yes. McBride doesn't do that as a trash talker. He's not going to go and he's not going to go use his words. He hypes up his team and the crowd by his play and the spectacular catches he's making and keeping this team in the game more than once on this season. It's kind of fallen on McBride's shoulders, and he has stepped up to the plate. He leads by example. He has become that catalyst of when you need an extra push, you need a spark in the offense, find 85.
Why would I disagree with that exactly?
Well, just because they...
Because you're Darren.
Well, because, that's...
Because you pontificate.
It wasn't just pompous, it was annoyingly pompous. Was that the definition?
Yes, it was.
Wow, that's pretty severe right there. Okay.
Well, look at Dani learning new words.
Oh, man. So, speaking of catching the ball, Marvin Harrison Jr., how much of a step forward was that? Big deal? Not a big deal? What do you think?
I think the Rams don't know how to cover him very well.
And you know what the Rams were saying going into the game? Like, well, we don't have that corner anymore, Tre'Davious White. We don't have that guy anymore. That was the guy that Marvin Harrison Jr. torched in the first quarter in week 2. Hello, I didn't see many other Rams corners that had much luck against. In fact, there was one play where he was wide open and had his hand in the air where he was deep middle. And Rams are lucky that Kyler was under duress at that moment and didn't have a chance to really see Marvin Harrison wide open down the middle of the field.
I mean, I think with all the talk that's been around Marvin over the last couple weeks, it was nice to see him have another good game. It would be really nice to have him have a good game against the 49ers. I don't expect him to get the 178 yards he needs for 1,000, but I think he's been just fine. We talked about this before. I've thought this all along. Like, he's going to be better next year, and they're going to figure some things out with him, and he understands a little bit more, and Kyler understands a little bit more, and this coaching staff understands a little bit more, and I don't think there's anything to worry about whatsoever, but it was nice to see him, especially for me, the back shoulder catch that was contested. Not only did they hook up on it, but he had to kind of beat back the guy to get the ball. That was really nice to see.
It's a good sign that all season long, Murray has trusted Harrison on those big-time moments, whether it's been fourth down. For instance, in LA, that's a great example of it was logged interception. I like going for it there if that's what you're going to do is find your number one receiver, and that's what Murray did. He was under duress immediately, rolled out to his left, and on the move, chunked it deep down to Harrison, who was double-teamed, and the ball was slightly over his head. But I like Harrison in those moments. It's not going to work every time. We've seen enough of them this season, though, to know that that's possible, and I think it says a lot that the quarterback still has that trust in a rookie receiver to want to go for him on those moments.
It's funny looking at a couple still photos of that play. Like, if Marvin's like a step and a half backwards, that's got a chance. I mean, he just happened to turn a little too soon or jump a little too soon or whatever it is, and the ball was just a little bit over his head, and the Rams guys were behind him. But that had a real chance if to be a Hail Murray type of play had Harrison been like another foot backwards.
I know you guys are running around after the game, but if you went back through Kyler Murray's media session at L.A., at the podium, and when he was asked about Marvin Harrison Jr. and JG mentioning, there's room to improve in terms of being physical, in the NFL and physically attacking the ball. And Kyler's quote was, "I think the physicality of it, coming from college to the league, guys don't realize how physical you can be when you get to the league. He's going to be big time." And it's not just the physicality you get from the corners, especially press man, but it's what you can get away with as a receiver. It's what Drew Terrell was talking about a few weeks ago, right? That we dictate to them. And maybe, as you think back to the entirety of his rookie season, maybe that's the area where he's had to improve the most. Is that, guess what? I'm ultra skilled. I have all the measurables. I'm a polished route runner. Sometimes in the NFL it comes down to, get off me, right? And you just shove the guy, and you got to get that separation before the ball arrives.
The expectations from fans and the league, I think, in the general sense, were, in hindsight, a little unfair. Despite being a 4th overall pick, Harrison has had a good year. There have been moments, and that's fair for the fans to have at times this season wanted more from Harrison, absolutely, because you see these great games like both times against the Rams, and then you're wondering in the middle of the season why it was inconsistent and why you weren't getting those games on a regular basis. And that's a fair question to have. When you're looking at the big picture, though, Harrison had a very good rookie season. And the fact that, again, his quarterback continued to trust him on those big-time plays and those huge moments where they really matter says a lot about what is going on outside of what everybody can see on a game day and what's going on in the meeting rooms and out on the practice field and the communication and trust that they are building there. I would expect a big jump from year 1 to year 2, similar to how we've seen a handful of other receivers around the league as they do start to get bigger and they start to get more comfortable and how physical they can be on their end and really fine-tuning their route running and having a better understanding with their quarterback and all of those things. So I can understand of the frustration when you see a game like Harrison has against the Rams and you're thinking, where has that been for 2/3 of the season? You got to be patient. It's uncomfortable, but you have to be patient.
And what did JG say during the bye week? The one area he would have liked to have seen Marvin Harrison Jr. get better by the end of the season was outside the numbers. That was the direct quote from the head coach on his weekly TV show. Well, that was a prime example of that. Not only were they 0 for most of the season on the back shoulder, right to the 2nd or 3rd level, and that was nice to see, the 24-yarder, but there were other catches outside the numbers. Somebody put out a stat, some sort of analytic, where he leads the NFL in crossing routes, route targets or catches. I found that really hard to believe.
I thought that was weird. I haven't seen that. That would be weird to me. It's funny that you say that because I got a question in the mailbag this week who was complaining about that they don't give Marvin enough chances to get yards after catch. And I guess I understand it, but like, again, if they're trying to get him better outside the numbers.
That actually was, if you guys remember, you go back to August, that was my biggest question coming in the regular season. How was Marvin Harrison Jr. yards after catch? You didn't see a lot of it at Ohio State. He was either just so wide open or he's already in the end zone. He just so often he'd make catches, he was untouched. How would he be after the catch? Because we never got a sense of that. He didn't play in the preseason except for those 3 plays where he's basically a decoy. And then nobody's hitting him like Buda Baker joked at the end of camp. So we didn't really know coming in how he would be after the catch.
That's the thing. I think taking into account what he did or didn't do in college in terms of who's covering him, and it wasn't just who was covering him. It's also that he had about 1 billion other wide receiver teammates that were really awesome too at Ohio State. So it wasn't like they always had the best guy on him necessarily. And this isn't taking anything away from what Marvin did in college, but again, there was going to be a learning curve.
And if Marvin, because he didn't see Puka Nacua, Cardinals did not see Puka Nacua in week 2.
He made up for that this week.
Yes, he did. I mean, you look at Matthew Stafford, 17 completions, 10 of them to Puka Nacua, 189 yards passing, 129 of that to the second-year former fifth-round pick, who, by the way, does not have blazing speed whatsoever, but he's an unbelievable receiver. And the reason I bring it up is if Marvin Harrison Jr. was watching, even Michael Wilson, you're watching Puka Nacua. I mean, you're big guys as receivers. And look at the way he gets it done. You know, you don't need to be the fastest dude on the field to be a really productive receiver in the NFL. And so, you know, I'm curious. By the way, the one stat that's hard to process with the Rams, and we're going to get into the division a little bit later, Matthew Stafford as Rams starter in December is now 13-1. So even though even though they played an ugly game and didn't get a lot done on offense, just he stinking finds a way. So I don't know if you can conduct a study in the offseason. Last year was momentum. Can you conduct a study this year in the offseason on finding a way? Yeah, that should be the next level, okay? You know, if you need to pontificate, you can do that too. Doesn't matter. You know, you can study it, you can pontificate it, whatever. Let's just get an answer to that.
I am not going to take a step back and dumb down my fine vocabulary because you guys are going to make me feel bad about it. It's not going to happen.
I'm grateful to expand my vocabulary. I don't think anybody's making you feel any type of way, Darren. You are in charge of your own emotions.
Thank you, Dr. Sureck.
Okay. Okay, as long as you're playing doctor here, Dani. James Conner, is he going in the season finale or not? That's my segue.
Wow,
that
her
was
medical
a good
degree
one.
is all over the place.
Man.
Yeah.
If it helps you, Trey Benson is now on injured reserve, so he will definitely not play.
I don't think it would be likely for Conner to play. And this is Tuesday before we've had any practice or seen any sort of injury report of anything of that nature. However, for Conner to not be able to go tells you the pain he was in. He got hurt in Carolina, hurt his knee, didn't go back in that game, was limited practicing all last week with a sleeve, was off to a hot start against the Rams and got twisted up. And I will tell you on the sideline, from the moment Conner came out of the game and started getting his knee looked at by the training staff, his helmet did not come off. Did not come off in the rest of that first half. Entire second half, he did not play a single snap. He had his helmet on the entire time on the sideline.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So he wants to play. You can tell he wanted to go in there, and that's the type of person and leader and player that he is. If Conner's going to be able to play and he's going to be able to tough through it, he's going to play. At some point, you also need to take into consideration his health. Now, this staff is not one that's going to sit players just for the fact that they are out of the playoffs. They're still going to have their plays. If you're healthy and you're ready to go, they're going to go out there and try and win the game. You just have to take into account how his knee is feeling. And if that even is the same knee he hurt his right knee in Carolina.
I think Gannon said it. He took a shot on the same knee. And that's not what happened. So, you know, I'm with Dani. I think he would definitely want to play. I think one of the reasons he would love to play is because if he does, it will be the first season he will have played an entire season without missing a game with injury. I think that means something to him. Now, I don't think he's going to go out there if he knows he's only going to be able to play 10 snaps again or whatever he played. But I think he would like to play. Now, the benefit that the Cardinals have is Michael Carter's looked really good when he's had to play. And that's going to be your number one back if James Conner can't go.
Michael Carter might lack the size of James Conner. He does not lack the confidence. We had him for an hour on the Big Red Rage, and you forget that as a rookie with the Jets, he was their leading rusher. You know, so he feels like he belongs in the NFL. He feels like he belongs with the ball in his hands. So and he was effective, you know, for most of that game. Now he's obviously a different style of runner and all the above. But, yeah, if they're going to give Michael Carter 20 touches in this game, I have no problem with that.
He brings the energy. He's got a little swag to him. Even when he's been on practice squad this year, he brings a little something with him.
I mean, Darren, name some of the nobody practice squad running backs the Cardinals have had to call up to finish seasons over years past.
God.
Right? There's been a few. There wasn't one guy, William Powell,
but that was the end of the preseason. That wasn't
okay.
the end of the regular season. That was when he had 37 carries in the last preseason game, William Powell. Yeah. God rest in peace. No, he is not dead. But you're just 37 carries in a preseason game. You'd think he'd be dead. I will say that it will be an interesting if Connor can't go, you're talking about a running back room of Michael Carter, DJ Dallas, Tony Jones, I would assume, would be brought up from the practice squad.
Yep.
Although, are you going to bring up 2 running backs from the practice squad in the last game? Because right now, Michael Carter remains on the practice squad. So do you sign him to the regular roster? It'll be an interesting combination of how that all comes about, how they figure it out.
Every week I've been putting slips of paper into the suggestion box outside Drew Petzing's office, for more tight end screens. This week, more carries for John Gaines. Can we get a carry for John Gaines? How about that?
I will say on the Michael Carter thing, and I can't remember if I mentioned this last week, I talked to him briefly after the Carolina game when he had to come in, and he was talking about how grateful he was being on this team. Now, we talk about how much swag he has and how much he believes in himself. Here's a guy who's been on the practice squad all year, and he clearly could be grumpy that he's been on the practice squad all year and not elevated until the Carolina game. And yet, after the game, he's like, I'm grateful to be on this team. I'm grateful to be in this organization. I love it here. I was a little bit surprised, given everything, of how much he kind of gushed about being in this situation, despite being on the practice squad all year.
Props to this offense for losing a bulldozing running back in Connor in the middle of the game, already without rookie Trey Benson, who was hurt with an ankle and is now on IR, similar runner to Connor. So you bring in Michael Carter, who's different. He's smaller. He's a lot more slippery. He's going to kind of hop over the blocks going in front of him to find his way through the gaps. He's not going to try and run through you, although he's not afraid. He's just going to make you miss a tackle. So for this Cardinals offense to be able to adjust mid-game and still be effective in the run game is an impressive feat, especially without your 2 bookend tackles.
Yes, and the fact that he gets it done in sort of a different way, and the fact that Cardinals still had almost 400 total yards, so that was that was intriguing. All right, I'm bracing myself mentally. I mean, nothing says the end of 2024 like yours truly. What?
Can't we bring over your Cardinals mantra for 2024 for you for Wise Guy? A 2024 dip. For a 2025 rip in Wise Guy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Except you got to have like 4 R's, rip. Okay, you gotta let it rip.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah, okay.
Danny had the best week in picks again this week.
Yeah.
It's amazing when I care about something, the effort I'm willing to put in.
Yeah.
You and I were both 12-3, Paulie.
No, #fishy. Something's going on here, Dani. I mean, the turnaround.
If something were going on, don't you think I would be a little closer than still 5 games back from you?
The question is, and you're 5 games back of Paul. Paul is 5 games back of me, so that makes you 10 games back of me.
So maybe
Dani.
Darren will just forget to submit his picks this week.
But as we go into the final week, it'll be interesting to see if you take any wild swings there, Dani, to catch up to at least Paul.
Okay.
You realize the difference here is beyond nominal. It's like 1.2% difference in 272 game schedule. You realize that, as you're flexing that over Darren, it's like a 1%
scoreboard
difference. And, anyway. All right, here we go. I'll just take my beat down like an adult here. Wise Guy Trivia in 3, 2, 1.
It's time for The Wise Guy, the world's fastest growing Cardinals quiz show. The stakes are low. The winner gets absolutely nothing. Here's your hostess with the mostest, Dani Sureck.
I love this time of day.
Here we go.
Big sigh from Paul.
My New Year's resolution is to ingest more arcane information in 2025. If Darren's going to start the use of big words around here, I'm going to go with that.
I feel like I'm often using big words.
You are.
I'm going to take number 3, Dani.
It's week 18. Darren's already thinking about Cancun. I'm locked in. Bring it.
This is a fun question.
I'm all about fun.
Former Cardinals and 49ers receiver Anquan Boldin ranks second all-time on the Cardinals receptions list with 586 catches. Name the 3 other players in franchise history who have caught more than 500 passes.
Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh, boy.
Roy Green. And this is going to be a guess, but I'm going to go Pat Tilley.
Incorrect. Damn it. Paul, you have the chance to steal. Name the 3 other players in franchise history who have caught more than 500 passes.
Fitz, Roy Green, Frank Sanders.
This was a tough one.
It was either that or Larry
It's not
Sanders.
Josh. Is it Larry
Sanders?
Son of a biscuit.
Yeah.
It's 50-50. I'm like Larry Sanders or Frank Sanders.
So Fitz had 1,432. Sanders 535. Green 522.
Larry Sanders slipped my mind completely, like he slipped out of so many.
That was a good question by Jim Alejandro.
Swing pass.
Here we go.
You got to pick your question, Paul.
Mother puss nugget.
Number 1.
Here we go. In the 2019 NFL Draft, Kyler Murray was selected first overall by the Cardinals, and Nick Bosa went to the 49ers with the 2nd pick. Name the 3rd overall pick from that draft and the team who made the selection.
2019.
I believe in you.
Kyler, Bosa. 2019. I want to say Trey Lance, but it wasn't because that was 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks. It was Jacksonville with an edge rusher. Trayvon Walker. No, that was number 1 2 years later. Oh, my goodness.
I'm going to go with the Jets and Quinnen Williams.
Darren for the steal.
There you go. Okay.
Because, Paul, you should have known those were the 3 names we kept talking about with what the Cardinals were going to do. I mean, nobody thought they weren't going to take Kyler, but those were the other names that we were talking about.
Well, if you care to remember the entirety of the 3 months leading to the draft, he was saying tick-tock.
That's true.
And I was focused solely on Kyler Murray. Anyway, here we go.
Darren, question 2 or 4?
I will take question 2. Did I say Pat Tillman or Pat Tilley? I thought I said Pat Tilley, but that's okay.
You said Tilly.
Okay. Just checking.
Okay. You ready?
Yes, I am.
In
As a matter of fact, I am.
In a 2021 game against the 49ers, Chandler Jones became the Cardinals' franchise leader in sacks. He was fined more than $10,000 after revealing a T-shirt featuring a photo of the previous record holder. Name the player who previously held the record.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. In a 2021 game against the 49ers, Chandler Jones became the Cardinals' franchise leader in sacks. He was fined more than $10,000 after revealing a T-shirt featuring a photo of the previous record holder. Name the player who previously held the record.
Was it Freddie Joe Nunn?
It sure was.
Wasn't
I
sure.
could see your face when I mentioned in the question the first time around that he was fined more than $10,000, and I knew you were thinking what on earth he had done to be fined.
Yeah, I don't. I remember the T-shirt thing. I don't remember the fine part of it. And I was like, yeah, that's why I had you reread it, because I got whiplash once you went to the T-shirt. I'm like, my head wasn't in a good place.
Okay, here we go, Paul, for funsies.
Oh, was that it? Okay.
Well,
all right, that
Darren's
decided
2-1 up on you.
Oh,
Unless
okay,
maybe
right.
this is the week you can convince
Okay.
Darren for an all or nothing tiebreaker. Time will tell. Here we go.
No.
This 4-time Pro Bowl offensive lineman played for every NFC West team except the Rams. His career spanned 11 seasons from 2010 to 2020. Name him. Offensive lineman who played for every
Come on,
NFC
Paul, you
West
know
team
this one.
except the Rams.
This is a layup for you.
4-time Pro Bowler.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And played at Idaho State or Idaho.
You remember the
I
most
remember the guy.
peculiar aspects without remembering the name.
I ran into him at the Phoenician, and can't remember.
By the way, it's
Can't
not
remember.
spelled with an L, everybody. When
It's
you
Mike
kept wanting-
Upati.
when you wanted to tweet
Mike
at me.
Upati. It took me a moment.
Mikey Potty, we'll give it to you.
Yes.
You know, I'm with
Yeah.
you. I feel like
Yeah.
the older I get, the harder it is for me to remember people's names.
Oh my gosh.
Shall we do a tiebreaker
Yeah. Go
for the
ahead.
final game?
Sure.
Is this all or nothing, Darren?
No.
Okay. Here we go. Get your pens ready. Wide receiver Anquan Boldin played 7 seasons with the Cardinals and 3 with the 49ers. Remarkably, he averaged the exact same yards per catch for both franchises. What was that number? Just so you know, Darren has given me a decimal point, so include that in your
Okay.
answer.
14.8. That's
12.1.
way too high.
It was 12.8.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Darren, that's your 15th win of the season. So regular season stats finished Darren 15,
Well,
Paul 2.
That's the that's the end. That's it, right?
Are we going to find a way to do these in the off season?
Probably not in the off. We'll find something else interesting in the off season,
Okay.
and
if you have any ideas, let us know.
We can come back
everybody.
to Wise Guy next season when the
Paul's
Cardinals
gonna
have to
spend-
go play a third place schedule instead of a fourth
Paul's
place
going
schedule.
to spend his off season binge watching TV, so he from
Yeah.
all the TV shows that are set
Right.
in our opponents' cities. That's how he's going to spend his off season, so he can be ready for the cultural question.
I'm gonna buy Hunter on DVD so Paul can watch it
The
again.
I
binge
don't even know what that
watching
is.
will have to happen on TV Land, is what will have to happen on.
That was like
Hunter?
the first Wise
Yeah.
Guy, wasn't it? Or one of the first Wise Guys? Yeah, there was a Hunter question, Fred Dreyer. Anyways,
Okay.
So speaking of the schedule, 2025, the opponents are out.
yes.
At home, Cardinals, in addition to the division, have Atlanta, Carolina, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Green Bay. And then away at Houston, Indy, Tampa, New Orleans, Dallas, Cincinnati. So 8 at home, 9 on the road. And obviously there's only, two kinds of NFL games on the road. There's either roof or no roof. So when you apply that filter to it, Houston roof, Indy roof, New Orleans roof, Dallas roof, and then Tampa and Cincinnati, no roof.
We have lucked out the last 2 years with weather at some places that could be pretty extreme. So all we got to do is cross our fingers for not going to Tampa Bay in September.
I know that you just partied it up in New Orleans and probably lost a couple days there, Danny. But I want to warn you, since you have not been there for a football game, it is absolutely hands down the coldest press box in the NFL. Come prepared.
Interesting. That is good to know.
So if we go there in September and it's miserably humid outside, you're still going to want to make sure you have a heavy coat.
It's good. I mean, Darren works ahead. That could be 11 months' notice right there for
That
the New
is.
Orleans press box. So that's
Also-
that's news you can
How
use.
else
Also,
Forget.
make sure you do your Louisiana taxes because they'll come find you if you don't.
Spoken like a man who's been there
Unfortunately.
and had that.
Oh,
had that
Omo let us know
episode.
there's no state taxes in 4 of our 9 road games next
I
year.
see.
Which I know
Yeah.
people are probably wondering, why are we even bringing this up? Well, it's because of that really cool rule that says all these states can tax professional athletes. As long as we're on the plane with them, we are treated as professional athletes, so we also have to pay these extra state taxes.
They come after the ham and eggers. I mean, come on now, right? So, yes. Personal gripes aside and airing of grievances, it is the season for Festivus.
nice.
It is interesting that the Cardinals, there were 3 variables. So now instead of playing Chicago, they play Green Bay because the Niners finish in last place. So they get the last place schedule, correct?
Right. So the way it works is almost all the division teams play the same teams except for 3 games. And that is determined by where you finish in the schedule. So the Cardinals, before the 49ers game, have already clinched 3rd place. I've already had people mad at me that I
Woohoo!
made that mention. I made it a mention in regard to knowing what the schedule is. They got mad that I would be promoting that they finished in 3rd. I'm like, no, that's not it. But anyways,
It's just a fact.
yeah.
It also means
You
we
could
can.
say secured.
It also means between now and the beginning of next season, we can refer to them as the last place 49ers.
That's true.
Go ahead.
But anyways, so the way it worked out was the 3rd place team in the NFC West, now we know as the Cardinals, they get a home game against the Packers because the NFC North was so incredibly strong, and road games at Cincinnati and at Dallas. Dani with a thumbs up, or actually her family. And then the 4th place team, instead of getting the Packers at home, get the Bears at home.
Oh.
And the 4th place team, instead of getting the road games at Cincinnati and Joe Burrow and Dallas, which I'm assuming is going to be healthy again, they get the New York Giants on the road, and they get the Cleveland Browns on the road. So a significant difference there.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, Caleb Williams and head coach Pete Carroll, I guess, will be going
I
to
saw
the
that.
San Francisco
That's
49ers.
not going to happen, is it?
Why not? Of course. Anything can happen with the Bears.
So what happens if Pete Carroll takes over the Bears? Are you just going to be all over double rainbow Chicago-wise?
Oh,
We don't
I-
even play them now.
Yeah, I know. That's disappointing. I know. That's, that's so... It's tough. You're right.
Should we do Cardinals Underground from my parents' house in Dallas?
I like it.
We don't have a basement, so we can't go underground.
Just
Brian, let us know.
No one would love that more than my dad, our number one fan.
By the way, what do you think? Which team is going to be the team to beat in the division next year? Yes,
Oof.
we're preempting the athletic process by a good 8 months.
Yeah,
You love a good poll.
But without a single offseason move being made, who do you figure is going to be the team to beat in the NFC West next year?
Assuming they're healthy, don't we go back to the 49ers until somebody knocks them out because they're not healthy?
Having just called this Rams game and looking in depth at their roster and seeing how many first and second and third year players the Rams have.
I don't disagree with
They're
you.
one of 4 teams that are younger than the Arizona Cardinals. And just considering and the way they've been able to draft, the way they've been able to pull Kyron Williams out of round 5 and Puka Nacua out of round 5, and they've hit on so many of their draft picks.
Here's my only issue with the Rams.
Okay.
Usually, not always, but usually, a quarterback falls off a cliff. At some point, Matthew Stafford is going to fall off a cliff, in my opinion. When is that? He's getting in that ballpark.
There were some inexplicably poor throws in Week 17 against the Cardinals where he just flat missed dudes, open receivers.
I'm not even saying based on what I just saw. I'm just saying, given his age, you just never know.
I would go 49ers.
Well, how about Brock Purdy, though? Now, he won't go in Week 18, but in that Monday night game, he threw another 2 critical picks down the stretch.
He also threw for 377 yards and accounted
49ers
for 4
have got
touchdowns.
an interesting situation this offseason on what they're going to do in terms of paying Purdy.
I agree with that. I guess I go back to in that game, yeah, he had 2 bad turnovers, but that's like getting – I'm sorry, I'm the same thing. 49ers rolled up all those yards and points. Where was the 49ers defense against the Lions? Nowhere.
But again, I'm going back to my Matthew Stafford is 13-1 in December as Rams starting quarterback. He had 0 touchdown passes, but he also had 0 interceptions. He threw for under 200, but
Their offense hasn't done jack squat for 3 weeks.
He
and they
figured
won
out a
all
way
the
to
games,
win.
but
they went from a 44-burger against the Bills to winning 12-6, 19-9, and 13-9. And by the way, I went back because apparently Grillo was just mailing in this holiday week. And so I looked myself. Since the bye, the one win the Cardinals have secured was the one game they won the turnover battle. New England, they were +1. Otherwise, Week 12 at Seattle, it was a push. But the one turnover was the 69-yard pick 6 that Kyler threw to Kobe Bryant. Week 13, Kyler had 2 picks at Minnesota. And by the way, if you give me one moment, just one singular moment of this season, it would probably have to be late third quarter. Cardinals lead at Minnesota 19-6. And they're not able to bring that one home. Then Week 14 against Seattle, they were -2. Kyler had 2 picks. The Week 15 against New England, +1, they win the game. Week 16 at Carolina, they were -2. And then this last week at the Rams, -2. And that's not all on the offense. Takeaways have been hard to come by for the Cardinals defense. So I surmise there's going to be a lot of conjecture and analysis and speculation in the offseason. What happened after the bye from 6-4 to 1-5, 2-5, 1-6, whatever it ends up being. And to me, you can start right there, the all-important turnover battle.
To come out of the bye and lose your first game, that happens. You want to say mentally it was taking you a bit of time to get back into the swing of things, fine. Although we heard from this coaching staff and the players alike, the process was the same during the bye week. What continued to happen after that, though, that was so different? The Cardinals entering the bye were on a 4-game win streak. Even leading up to that win streak earlier in the season, the games that they were losing more times than not, they were in it. It was a team that you could tell was starting to figure things out early in the season. Then as they got to that middle portion, really started getting rolling. So what was the fall off after the bye week? That's absolutely going to be an area of emphasis for what everybody's going to try and figure out to make sure that doesn't happen again moving forward. When you're talking about takeaways against the 49ers, you have to wonder if you're going to have some more opportunities given who's going to be at quarterback for San Francisco, because it's not going to be Brock Purdy, who hurt his elbow against the Lions. Is it going to be Josh Dobbs, former Cardinals quarterback who was filling in last year when Kyler Murray was still on IR with that ACL injury? Wouldn't that be something?
I got to go back and find the soundbite. It was one of his last press conferences. In the last question, I For better or worse, I ended the press conference when I asked Josh Dobbs. Josh, hard-hitting question over here. Paulie Pencilneck, you probably can't see me. I'm behind Darren. Do you believe in aliens? Was my question. Do you believe in UFOs? You know, as the pastronaut, as a guy who works with NASA in the off season. And he gave a brilliant 2-minute answer, most of which I couldn't comprehend. In the very end, he said absolutely not. He does not believe in UFOs and or aliens.
Wonder what he thinks of all the drones going on.
I keep wondering how disappointing that was to Paul, who
it really was disappointing in a lot of ways.
About that celestial possibility.
I got to go back and find that answer, and I'm going to try. It'll take me a while to study it. I'll probably have to get some outside help to understand the finer points of his answer. But maybe by game day, I'll be able to prove Josh Dobbs wrong.
You can pontificate your thesis.
Right.
What karaoke songs did you sing, Dani?
Where did that come from?
It became at the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about how you went on karaoke.
Okay, why are you coming at me so hot right now?
You got very irritated with me, and I was curious.
It was a group effort. There were 2 microphones, so we were all singing together. There was the book was huge of all the songs.
Two song
what
names.
Did we
That's
sing?
all you have to give me.
We sang Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne. That was a good one. We sang some Bee Gees, and by we, I only mean Kyle and myself, because nobody else in our group even knew who the Bee Gees were, which is unfortunate. We sang...
How much liquid courage do you need to karaoke?
In a group where I'm friends with people, not a ton. I mean, I'm not a good singer by any means.
I think he's setting you up to take us out here this
No,
year-ending
that's not what's
edition
happening.
of Cardinals Underground. You're going to provide the musical accompaniment on the way out? No?
Actually, my 2024 New Year's resolution was to never sing on this podcast, so I have to finish strong.
I see. Right.
Sorry, Paul.
There's some
and
revision.
that's coincidentally also my 2025 New Year's resolution.
Right. It's good.
You're strong with those resolutions. You got anything else in the
the
back pocket other than not to sing?
I got to be honest. I'm not a big resolutioner. Goal setting is great. I don't love the idea of saying this is my New Year's resolution because everybody falls off by beginning of February. I do want to read more. I don't read during the season. I feel like that's just so hard. In the off season, I enjoy reading and I do such a poor job at like keeping up with it the way that I want to. So I guess I would say reading.
How about you, Paul?
Addition by subtraction, we're getting rid of Wise Guy Trivia 2025.
I want Cheeto to get more treats.
Most,
that's my New Year's resolution for you.
No. Well, actually, he might have to.
Is that on the treats or the Wise Guy?
Well, I'm testing out my new weight loss medication for dogs. So you're right, more treats so we can continue to conduct our tests.
Ozempic for dogs.
And by the way, PETA, I'm joking. We're joking. All right, I don't need any sort of cease and desist order.
Why do you have to joke? Why would PETA care? They don't want overweight dogs either.
I just said we're testing out new weight loss medication on my dog at home. PETA, you don't know these people. I mean, they'll come bang on your door.
Darren, what's your resolution?
What's my resolution?
Yeah, dress fancy more often.
Oh, clearly, dress fancy more often. I think that's number one. Become a clothes horse, yes. I don't know. Probably keep my nose out of my kids' business more often and stop being... let them be on their own.
Did they give you that resolution?
No, they didn't. But I'm trying to be better about that because let me tell you something. You go through that part where you're the kid and you're always wondering about your parent, and then you get to the point where your kids become the adults and you're like, you struggle with it a little bit and want to tell them, maybe that's not the best idea. Nope, just let them sink or swim on their own.
Yeah, let them touch that hot burner every once in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
That's what Brian does, right? He lets you touch the hot burner.
Sure does.
Yeah.
And okay, well, I guess I'm waiting just to make sure Dani's not going to take us out with any sort of Avril Lavigne or Bee Gees. No, okay, that'll do it. We'll talk to you next year on Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.